There were actually 2 tips that reached the Secret Service in the week before JFK's trip here to Chicago. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover reported the first tip to Chicago Secret Service agent in charge, Maurice Martineau. Hoover's information was that at least one hit team with high-powered rifles would attempt to shoot the president from a warehouse or office building overlooking the president's motorcade route that coming Saturday. A break in the case came on Thursday, October 30th, 2 days before the president's arrival at O'Hare. A landlady at a rooming house here in the vicinity of Clark and Division Streets reported that she oversaw 4 rifles with scopes and a map of the president's motorcade route in one of the rooms she had rented to 4 dark-complected men. Chicago's Secret Service initiated 24-hour surveillance, but Agent J. Lloyd Stocks blew his cover in an alleyway behind the rooming house on Friday evening and had to take 2 of the suspects into immediate custody. The second tip involved a man reportedly spouting anti-Kennedy rhetoric and known to have owned multiple firearms. There were some amazing similarities between this man and the man who would be arrested for JFK's murder 3 weeks later.
Yeah, nothing to see there. Why are we here?
Keep moving, folks. Just keep moving. Nothing to see there. Nothing to see there.
Yeah, I mean, nothing burger.
Nothing burger. What could possibly have gone wrong there?
Isn't that what was determined? Hey.
Yeah. Well, look, they destroyed all their records of Secret Service, so they must have thought it was important.
Well,
Yeah. Listen,
we've never seen that happen again.
Yeah, if you know anything about this in the chat, don't give it away. Don't be. I don't come to your job and kick the shovel out of your hand. All right, let us tell the stories here. I'm tired of looking over there and seeing some cat, going, "Hey, this is going to happen next." That's really helpful. I just want to point that out. That's really helpful to blow the story out by saying stuff. That being said, go ahead, Hanley. I'm sorry.
Also, just to let everybody know, I don't like doing it too much, but the chat's gotten a little bit disruptive at times. So the mods are going to be affecting some timeouts. We're not going to kick anybody from the channel or anything like that. But if things, get out of hand, there's a lot of yelling or whatever.
Whoa.
We might time people out for a few minutes. That's all.
Damn, that's ugly. But you got to do it, Hanley. Got to step up.
I mean,
you got to do something. It's like a hockey game in there, Hanley.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with the Barnes analogy. Because I'm pretty open about freedom of speech, blah, 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 blah. But Barnes puts it really nicely. It's like a bar.
A gay bar.
Well, that's your bar. But it is a bar, and we welcome everyone.
Come on in.
But if you're acting like an ass, you're going to get yanked. So that's essentially
by the bouncer.
Yes.
Only the bouncer.
Well, actually, the Scots. I have 2 Scots on the moderation team.
Wow.
Who are the bouncers.
Hootman. That's great. That's great. Yeah.
We got help from overseas. We brought them in.
Come in from another country. We brought in muscle.
That's right.
That's right. Go ahead. Go take on the Scotsmans now. Big shots. Big mouths over there giving away the story. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for the incredible comments from last week's episode. It was absolutely amazing all over the country. Comments from all over the world. Barnes going crazy. Everybody, people on Twitter. I had no idea it was going to have that kind of impact to make Hunley cry. That being said, the comments were amazing. At some point, I'll be going to France with a friend who has a farm there and visiting him, and I will pursue the story at that time during the course of this year. So I just kind of squared that up. I'll try to go to Montreal and Toulouse and find Nico and, give him back his homies because the man needs his homies, Hunley. He's got to have his homies.
You're going to have to record that.
Right. And I think the DVDs, obviously, the family has the originals. They make copies and mailed it to him. So that's not an issue. But the personal stuff, I'd like to hook up with him, return them to him, and catch up in part 2, the French connection.
That'd be amazing if we live streamed it.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm sure.
I don't know. We'll have to figure tech out.
This French international law applies. If Europe survives the winter, which is highly doubtful at this point, Hunley. You know, whether they'll survive as a culture in the winter this year, because
I don't know.
It's going to get cold. It's going to get cold. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, well. All right. So today, though, we are talking about the first African-American Secret Service agent put into office from JFK, Abraham Bolden. And
right. He's the first White House detail African-American. He was a Pinkerton detective. He was born in Chicago. Graduated cum laude and from college and went to school in Illinois, but he becomes the first African-American Pinkerton detective first. Then he becomes Illinois State Trooper highway patrolman. So he's got background here. This is not a guy that just plucked out of thin air. He goes and he's asked to apply for the Secret Service, but he fails the civil service exam, oddly enough, and kind of gives up. He has a setback and says, forget it. But there's some sort of program where they take you in based on your background. And he had a background that met the qualifications. In other words, he had a law enforcement background. So you could go around the civil service exam, which is what they did. And he's from Chicago, so he was based in Chicago. And I think there's about 300 Secret Service agents in the country at that time, the bulk of them focusing on counterfeiting for the Treasury Department, which is what he did out of Chicago. And he made his bones as one of the top law enforcement Secret Service guys in terms of busting counterfeit rings. And so he got a bunch of awards as a Secret Service agent. Before Kennedy, before the White House detail, before anything, he was working as a Secret Service agent and working on counterfeiting. So when Kennedy goes to visit Daley after the election, he is in a building that has different functions. He gives a speech, and he's going down to the men's room where Bolden is stationed, because they put the black guy, of course, to guard the. That's him as a Illinois State Highway patrolman, as a state trooper. He graduates from that, as I said, into the Secret Service, and he works for a guy who's in charge of the Secret Service branch out of Chicago named Maurice Martineau, who will become his boss. And obviously some sort of a problem erupts with this guy, which we'll get into later. This is a crazy story. I mean, this thing has never been told. We'll get to what happens with it, but we're combining two stories here. One is the incredible story of Abraham Bolden, who, as Pierre Salinger, the press secretary for JFK, called him the Jackie Robinson of the Secret Service, which is true. That's absolutely true. Right. So he's down in this building guarding the men's room, and, just looking around, doing nothing. There's nothing happening. Everything's upstairs. When all of a sudden he hears this incredible loud noise coming down the stairs, and it's a gaggle of men and photographers and just, everybody's coming down the stairs. And lo and behold, there's JFK right in his face. And he says, no, right there in the men's room. And he says, and who are you? And he says, my name is Abraham Bolden. He says, you're with the Secret Service? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, what's your assignment? He says, well, I'm guarding the bathroom down here. And he says, how would you like to be on the White House detail? And he says, of course. And that's the beginning of how he becomes a personal White House detail Secret Service agent for John F. Kennedy.
That's a hell of a promotion.
Well, he's in the Secret Service. It's not that crazy, but yeah.
I know, but the bathroom to the White House. Come on.
From the outhouse to the White House is really how we put it here in the story department. But he's essentially, the next day, he's flown to the White House, where he's being assigned certain things to do, and he there's a door open, and he hears the voice of JFK, who summons him to come in. And he said, I want you to meet Bobby, and the whole thing. And he says, okay. And then, Bobby, this is Abraham Bolden. And he comes out, and this old drunk guy who was semi-retired, who went back all the way past Truman as a Secret Service agent, says, where'd you go? He said, the president asked me to come in the office. He says, I don't give a shit who asked you to come in there. You never abandon your post without having someone replace you at the post. He said, he may call you, but you got to get a guy. And he says, well, I don't know. I just got here. He's the president. And anyway, it starts him off on a very bad footing with the other members and overseers and bosses of the Secret Service right out of the bat, because they see he's getting attention and preferential treatment, and he's essentially a rookie. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
At one point, they're in Hyannisport, and the guy throws him an AR-15, or the equivalent, the 1962 version of an AR-15. And he goes, here, stand around. He goes, what do I do? I never had any training with this gun. You know what I mean? It's not, he doesn't have a military background. He's a cop, essentially, right? So he says, just make believe you know what you're doing. So he stands there with the AR-15, making believe like he knows what he's doing. But he quickly realizes the incredible deficiencies of the entire Secret Service White House detail. And that is the crux of this story. The fact that this guy who came from the Pinkertons, who came from the state police, who came from Chicago, who was raised on the south side of Chicago, who's seen some stuff, realizes that this organization not only is filled with Southern white, hard-drinking racists who are using the N-word against him, they hate JFK. And he is going, holy cow, what have I stumbled into here, Hunley? And he doesn't know what to make of all this, but he realizes that this is not a quiet guy. This is not a timid guy from Mississippi. This is a big mouth, urban Chicago guy. This is not a guy who's intimidated. He's not an introverted dude. This is a guy who is very aggressive and says what's on his mind, just in general. And that gets him into trouble with higher ups throughout his career.
He looks tough.
Yeah.
Look at him. He's got kind of that. He has an edge on him, like he has a little bit of street came up.
Yeah, he does. He's married to Barbara Bolden. Eventually has 3 kids. I don't know how many he's got at this point in the storyline. But he marries her. The Bolden family, even to this day, is a renowned family in Chicago because of him. So keep that in mind. He now goes and reports this stuff to his higher ups. And he goes to this guy, Bauman, who is retiring, and he says, look, this thing, they're racist, they're drinking. And Bauman goes, look, what are you starting trouble for, right? And he goes up the ladder to James Rowley, who is the director of the Secret Service. Rowley says, who did this? What are the names? I'll look into this. There's James Rowley, whose best friend, Rowley came from an organization in 1961 to take over the Secret Service. He came from an organization called the FBI. And his best friend was a guy, an obscure guy named J. Edgar Hoover. So Hoover has his men, or his man, in this case, running the Secret Service. Now, the reality of it is the Secret Service always feels that the FBI wants to take away their ability to guard the president. They don't believe that the Secret Service should do this. And the Secret Service should be focused on Treasury. They're under the Treasury Department umbrella.
And there's some arguments to be made there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The whole Secret Service thing, it just kind of fell into
it's a freaky thing. Yeah, it's a freaky thing. I mean, it really is. And
they also are older than the FBI, which is an interesting thing too.
Right, but it's limited to a few men. They're, like I said, basically focusing on selling cars. A different profession is what I mean, doing the Treasury and counterfeiting. And all of a sudden, you're tasked with this one thing having nothing to do with the other thing. So It's odd. The thing is odd. So they always feel like the FBI wants to take them over. And in fact, they're not far off. There are rumors to this effect. Bobby Kennedy's not happy with the Secret Service. He wants his handpicked men. He wants Green Berets, Bobby Kennedy. He doesn't even want the Secret Service. He doesn't know these guys. They go to Hyannisport to guard the Kennedys, right? And the family. So they live in these cabins. And in the cabins, they are drinking around the clock. And then Bolden says, holy cow, they went into town. It's a Secret Service. They're on duty all the time, right? They're on different shifts. They're overlapping shifts. They go into town. They bring back girls to the cabins. Now they're getting drunk with these girls. And Bolden's like stunned. He's going, what the hell's going on here? I mean, he is really absolutely stunned by the lack of professionalism.
Discipline.
And discipline, really. Yeah. Discipline is the real thing among these guys. And he gets into a thing where a guy puts a noose in the house, and then there's N-words going back and forth, and he goes through a lot of abuse, this guy. Now, that being said, his time in the White House is very short because they're rotating guys in and out of there, and he goes back to Chicago. He's not there very long. It's only a month or two, and he goes back to Chicago, and he gets back into the counterfeiting operation where he is doing his job one day, and across the teletype, this is October 30th, 1963. Keep in mind where we are, people, in this story. JFK is coming out of Tampa. They had a problem down in Tampa. We don't really know what happened there. We're going to do a separate episode about Tampa and that plot. He's supposed to, and I know this sounds familiar, he's supposed to land his plane at O'Hare, go on a motorcade, make a hairpin turn at 9 miles an hour in front of an open office building warehouse, and then proceed to Chicago's Soldier Field, where the Air Force is playing the Army to meet General Bombs Away Curtis LeMay. So this is the plan. And okay, so it's a weird plan, but it's very similar to another plan, which happens a couple of weeks later. So he has this idea that he's going to land there. And so the Secret Service starts to do their thing. So they go around and they start, checking on different things. So this landlady in a rooming house, this is where things start to happen. The landlady rents the room to like 4 shady guys, right? There's like 4 shady guys rent the room. Okay, or 2 rooms. It was 2 and 2. But at headquarters of the FBI, a teletype comes across the transom. This is at FBI headquarters. And a guy tears off the teletype, and it says, not the exact wording because it's been destroyed, but it's been reported to have said, hitman of 4 men, anti-Castro Cubans, 4 Cuban hitman team coming to Chicago to try to assassinate the president in Chicago. Okay, that's bad. That can't be too good. So the FBI, who doesn't want any part of this, it says Secret Service, it's your problem. Calls up this guy, Martineau, the head of the office, Maurice Martineau, and tells him what I just told you. So Martineau goes, what? He goes, yeah, we got to get into action here. And he says, all right, what do you want to do? He goes, all right, let's, beat the bushes, find out what's going on out there. So this landlady, who goes into this room to clean it in the rooming house, looks on the bed. What's on the bed? 4 high-powered rifles with scopes, Eric. That's what's on the bed. Now that's, wait.
As you'll have, yeah.
As you'll have, right? As you'll have. With a map, and on the map is the parade route to go to Soldier Field from O'Hare. And on that map, it goes right past this building, not the rooming house, this building, this hairpin turn, which is the equivalent of the Texas School Book Depository, but in Chicago. And who works in that building? A guy named Thomas Arthur Valley. Now you say to yourself, wow, who is Thomas Arthur Valley? How could this guy be of any importance to anybody? He works in that building, and it's a lithograph building. Looks like a normal guy. And they say, well, what's his background? You know what I mean? How could this guy be? He's a loner, right? Absolutely.
Sweetie.
What's that?
He looks like a sweetie. Really nice guy.
Nice guy. He's just schizophrenic. He had 2 tours of duty in Korea, metal plate in his head. He is a real marksman, not unlike Oswald. He ends up at a base in Japan, just like Oswald, a CIA base with U-2 spy planes, just like Oswald at Sugi. This is exactly the mirror image of Oswald, but in Chicago. This guy here has every single thing like Oswald. Okay, he's not one of the 4 guys. He's a guy floating around who works in the building on the 3rd floor, like Oswald worked on the 5th floor. He works in this printing warehouse, which is the hairpin turn equivalent of the hairpin turn for the Texas School Book Depository. So this guy here is the guy they're looking for, and they assign a guy named Groth he was a top intelligence cop. Now, Groth is an interesting guy. He works for Chicago PD Intel Division with CIA connections, kind of like Manny Pena in the RFK case. If you remember Hernandez and Pena, Eric, CIA trained, CIA backed, but they're in intelligence units of urban police forces. That's what Daniel Groth is. Daniel Groth is assigned the job of finding Thomas Arthur Valley. Thomas Arthur Valley is floating around somewhere on the north side of Chicago, and this guy goes up there to Valley's uptown rundown apartment on Paulina and Wilson, and he finds a carbine rifle, a handgun, and 2,500 rounds of ammunition. He's not there. Valley's not there. Okay, so that's not good. So then, on the other side, the Secret Service stakes out the rooming house with the 4 guys waiting for them to come back. Okay? The guy sits in the alleyway and waits for them to come back. 2 of them come back, and the guy drives down the alleyway, can't get out because it's one way and he's trapped. So they get out of their car and they walk by and they look in the car, and there he's got a police radio, and they're squawking on the radio about this stuff, and the 2 guys get away. And it's an embarrassment to this guy. I think his name was Stocks. And he was ridiculed back at Secret Service headquarters in Chicago for allowing these 2 guys to get away. Bolden is in that office at that time. Bolden is there during the interrogation of the 2 guys they do pick up. Now, the 2 guys they do pick up, one guy is named either Gonzalez or Morales or Hernandez, big guy with greasy hair, big muscular guy, and then a white guy named Bradley or Braden or something like that. He's not really sure who these people actually were, but they're released. They have to be released, Hunley. Those are the rules, especially because the president's coming in a day or 2. This is now November 1st, and he's coming the next day and the 2nd. So these 2
you want the bad guys out. It looks bad for the president to come if your bad guys are locked up.
Right, I guess. I don't know what logic that is.
No, obviously not.
But the descriptions of the 2 guys fit these 2 guys who are players in our storyline who are going to come up and have come up in the past. And if you show a picture of these 2 guys, David Morales and Jim, there's Morales, and you'll show another guy named Jim Braden in a second, who's going to end up being, there's your Morales shots. That's Morales a little older there.
Yeah, it's getting a little variety, so everybody can enjoy Morales.
And here's Jim Braden, a.k.a. Eugene Hale Brading, a.k.a. Bradley, a.k.a. a guy that's arrested in the Daltex building immediately after the shooting and is taken into custody. But plot twist, Hunley. Didn't see that coming. So Bradley, which could be Braden, and he has a number of AKAs, apparently is a guy who is a lookout spotter type. In other words, he's not a shooter. Morales is a killer. Morales would walk down the street in Central America and South America, was well known as a CIA assassin. David Morales is one of the most famous assassins in the history of the CIA, a.k.a. the Indian, a.k.a. the Big Indian, a.k.a. Killer, a.k.a. stay away from this guy.
He might have been tied to Kiki Camarada.
Yeah, he's tied to everybody. Yeah,
and the DEA agent who was murdered in Mexico.
Morales
for some reason, I remember something. I'd have to look that up.
Morales has a very long career. He specializes in coup d'états in South America and Central America. When he was, what he said himself, when he was seen walking down the street of a capital in Central or South America, that was indication that that government was going to be toppled within a couple of weeks. And he would personally take out the top guys, not the leader, but the head guys. He would personally assassinate them. So if this was indeed Morales in Chicago, it would make sense because this guy has a CIA career of doing this type of thing. Now, this is just speculation on my part. These are just dots. I haven't connected these dots because there he is playing. That's later when he retired, actually. He's buried, I think, in southern Arizona. He moved to Arizona, kind of where you're from, Eric, and retired, eventually passed away, is buried there. David Morales, the Indian, who I believe may have been a shooter on the roof of the Texas School Book Depository or on the far window away from the window on the 6th floor. I believe that he was up there at some point, possibly on the rooftop, possibly with the British Enfield rifle that we talked about, the shot that hits Connolly and goes down into Connolly's thigh. I think that was David Morales. That being said, this group of men, the 4 men, what's his name being a fifth wheel, Thomas Arthur Valley is not part of the four. Valley is the patsy. In other words, he is shadowed by Daniel Groth and not arrested. Groth finds him. Groth pulls over his car for a turn signal, and he finds a hunting knife on his seat. And he says, "Can I look in your trunk?" He says, "Yes." In the trunk is another 750 rounds of ammunition and another rifle. But he's not arrested because that would be wrong, Hunley. When
going hunting.
Yeah, when JFK, well, they need him. If you think about it, they need him to be picked up after the shooting, not before the shooting. So when JFK cancels the arrival. When JFK cancels this, which he does because they smell a rat, big trucks have to go up and down Chicago. There's thousands of people. Think about everyone in Dallas for that parade of the limousine. All of those people, thousands of them, more than Dallas, will lined up to see the president. So trucks with giant loudspeakers, nobody knows this story. This is an incredible story. Trucks with giant loudspeakers go up and down the boulevard saying, trip canceled, president not coming, go home, good luck, get the F out of here. And everybody's like, what? And they just go home, right? The game goes off. The Air Force versus Army. Air Force, of course, is crushed once again by Army, as you're well aware, with LeMay not too happy about it once again, but it was difficult for the Air Force to beat any of the other service teams. Just so you know, that's a side story. But and that's at Soldier Field. So in theory, if everybody played their part, Kennedy would have had his head blown off in Chicago. LeMay would have been notified at Soldier Field. He would have shed a brief tear and then taken over control of the government with the vice president en route to the White House. That was the plan. Didn't go well, so they had to go to Dallas. How long later? 3 weeks. Okay. That's how quickly these things are happening, folks. That's how quickly these events are going on. So
how far after Florida was this? This was only a week or two after Florida, right?
That's right. This is a couple of weeks after Florida.
There's a tight window saying,
yeah. They are closing in. They want to take care of business. So these are 3 plots in a row. Secret Service destroyed all their documentation when subpoenaed by the House Assassination Committee in '78. They literally told them to go F themselves. They said, "Where's the documentation?" They said, "Let's read our lips. We destroyed it. You're not getting it." That's what James Rowley told the Assassination Investigation Committee in one of the most brazen deep state moves. Not, "We can't find it." There's James Rowley. Not, "We can't find it." Not, go screw yourself. No. We're going to show up and tell you we destroyed it. Now, O&I does the same thing, but that's not the same as the Secret Service. O&I also says they destroyed their stuff to the House Assassination Committee, but that's O&I. Secret Service, what they were subpoenaed to present was the security plans for all 3 of these trips. That's what they wanted. They wanted the documentation of these 3 plots. They wanted to know who was on the job, how they were handled. Okay, so how is it handled? When it comes into the Chicago office, this guy Martineau tells everyone in the office, nobody should say a word about this for reasons nobody knows. And he is told by Rowley to personally bring the information to him in D.C.
That's supposed to be Martineau.
Oh, okay. Well, this obviously is 95. Yeah. So this guy Martineau brings the secret information of this plot that only him and Rowley are allowed to talk about, thereby making it very suspicious. The cover-up begins, and it is pervasive covering up this plot. However, NBC News covers it. The Chicago Tribune covers it. The newspapers have these articles about it, and they exist, and I've read them and I have them. So this is not a complete blackout by the Secret Service. There are stories. Think about blackout. One of the best articles is written in 1975 by a reporter working for the LA Weekly of Chicago called the Chicago Reader, I think it was. And he was a guy named Edwin Black. And he did a 20-page article about this, which we'll put up for members on Locals, Eric. It is the only comprehensive article ever written about the Chicago plot. And it's written by a guy named Edwin Black. At one point, he even goes undercover and he finds Valley. And he starts interviewing Valley, claiming to be himself a right-wing Minuteman. The reporter. And he's recruiting Valley. This is years later. This is in 75. He finds Valley. Where's Valley? Of course, he's in Arizona, like Hunley and everybody else. So he finds Valley, and he says, I'm recruiting shooters, as he tells Valley. And Valley says, I'm in, right? Whatever it is, I'm in. So that's kind of weird. You know, he says, well, we got to do a background check on you, Valley, because we just can't take any shooters for this operation. The next day, at his office, the Chicago Reader office where this guy works, get a call. And it's is that Edwin Black?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, great. So Edwin Black, his boss, this is the equivalent of the LA Weekly. It's an alternative newspaper like the Village Voice, but Chicago's, right? His publisher gets a call, and he gets a call. Who is it from? Secret Service. And they said, have you been interviewing Arthur Valley? He goes, why would you say that, bro? He goes, well, we got word. And the guy's very smart, Black. He just says, from who? He says, what are you asking me that for? I don't know Arthur Valley. He says, well,
he's a good reporter. He's like bleeding for more info.
And he says, why would you think I did it? And he traps the guy into admitting that they were contacted, that someone by Arthur Valley, who's obviously, he's in witness protection, but it's some ad hoc witness protection program based on nothing, just to hide him out. Because he goes around the country, has different jobs.
That makes sense. I love that, though, where it's like he's getting him to reveal information. Oh, yeah. How do you know that? And I'm like,
right.
That guy,
yeah.
that's a smooth reporter.
Right. That was brilliant. And the guy kind of trapped the guy. He then interviews various other Secret Service agents who essentially tell him to go F himself, one after another. But he doggedly goes after each one to get a quote, including Martineau. Now, Martineau will be back in a little while for the show, but let's get back to Daniel Groth, the guy who, now that the president's motorcade has been canceled, what does Daniel Groth do about Thomas Arthur Valley? Well, an hour and a half after the thing's canceled, right, he arrests Arthur Valley because the parade's been called off. So Valley gets arrested, and they
don't need him anymore.
They don't need him anymore. But there he is. There's Arthur Valley, and you'll look at the date. You'll see November 2nd, 1963 in the right-hand corner. This is actually the official mugshot of Thomas Arthur Valley being arrested for having a hunting knife on his car seat, which was a misdemeanor. He was immediately released and fined and paid the incredible fine of $5. So
just $2 less than the gun that Oswald had, right?
Right, like right. So Valley is released. But he was arrested, ironically enough, an hour and a half after the parade was canceled, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so you say, well, what does Daniel Groth do for the rest of his life? Well, a couple of years later, he puts 99 bullets into a guy named Fred Hampton on the south side of Chicago, head of the Black Panthers, executing Fred Hampton. So he got a call, Groth, according to him, from the FBI to take care of Fred Hampton. Here they're carrying out Fred Hampton's body in Chicago that night, just bullets just flying into the bedroom, executing him with 99 bullets. That being said, Groth was the executioner, that same guy with the CIA connections. And it was really CIA that contacted him, according to Groth. I mean, that they had to take out Fred Hampton, not execute him, but issue an arrest warrant for Fred Hampton. It didn't go well. So Hampton gets killed, and there's a parade in the neighborhood of people coming in to see the body. The whole neighborhood is brought into the apartment. The whole neighborhood walks through the apartment. There's bullet holes, thousands of them, it looks like, throughout the apartment. But, that's a separate story for a separate day. I just wanted to talk about Daniel Groth and the people that were involved in this in the intel unit of Chicago, because this is who you were dealing with. Now, Bolden goes back to work. This story, a week or two later, Bolden has a feeling that something bad is going to happen to Kennedy, tells everyone, his wife, his family, and sure enough, on the 22nd, this comes true. And Bolden, he said his knees buckled and he collapsed because he kind of knew it was coming. And in January of 1964, literally 2 months later, the Secret Service recalled every single agent's ID and had to issue them new IDs, new photographs, new covers for they're called their commission books, because of the reality that they went missing in Dallas, that people were running around with secrets. This was an acknowledgement indirectly by the Secret Service. Every single agent had to turn in their ID and were issued new ID, new photos, one by one, including Bolden. And it used to say on the leather outside, it used to say Treasury Department. So now it said in small letters, the Treasury Department. That was the only difference. The Treasury, a little side tip, little factoid there. So they all get these new IDs because don't forget, in the cellar in Fort Worth, where I'll be going in a couple of weeks to explore what happened, that's where the Secret Service drank white lightning, got shit-faced, and lost their guns and IDs in the bathroom. So the Secret Service was embarrassed about this, and that's why they recalled every single ID that they had. And you say to yourself, well, who prints these things? Where they go to Kinko's, Eric? I'm like, where are they printed? They're printed in the printing division of an organization called the CIA. So if anybody, I can't make this up. If anybody, by the way, hold on, I got to take a sip of coffee, and I need like a big sip. So I just want to make sure I can handle this with a big sip of coffee.
Oh my Lord.
Thank you. Anyway, this
in case you need another hot tub.
Yeah. Thanks, Ziggy. The story goes like this. You know, they in the cellar, they lost their IDs, they drank moonshine, and a comic came out, as we discussed. We'll get into this when we do the Secret Service episode, by the way. We're going to do a separate episode just on the Secret Service. So this one's about Bolden, and there's some overlaps with the Secret Service, but we're going to do a full Secret Service episode. And in that night, this is the night before in Fort Worth, they go out and they party, like apparently Bolden indicated they did every night anyway.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
Yeah, they drank White Lightning. The place didn't have a liquor license, so the owner gave them moonshine in mason jars, which is the only way to drink moonshine for those aficionados. We all know you drink moonshine out of a mason jar, sometimes with a straw, but that's for pussies. So anyway, they're drinking this, and they hear the voice of JFK in the club, and they have a freaking heart attack. There was 9 agents who were in that club. And they hear the voice of JFK, and they freak out because they left him in the hotel in Fort Worth, I think it's called the Rice, with firemen to guard him. They said, you firemen, come here. You want to guard the president? We got to go out. So they took like 2 or 3 firemen from Fort Worth, and they said, stand here by this door, which is what the firemen did. They guarded the president while these maniacs went out and drank moonshine. So they lose their guns. They lose their Treasury Department IDs, and they hear the voice. Yeah, that's the owner of the cellar, which is upstairs. Not really a cellar, by the way. That was a misnomer. It was upstairs. Your friend
just want to get everybody to understand the environment.
Yeah. This here's a friend of Jack Ruby's. But anyway, so they hear this voice of the president in the room in the nightclub. And they look up, and it's not a president. It's not JFK. It's not a Kennedy at all. It's a comic. And the comic's name was George Carlin. And George Carlin told me this story personally because I became friends with Carlin years later, as many of you people would suspect. Why wouldn't I be friends with George Carlin? He told me this. I asked him about it because I had heard this story, and he confirmed it for me. He was doing a radio job early in his career. It was suit and tie, clean cut, hippy dippy weatherman, George Carlin, before he became a freak. But nevertheless, he was able to do impersonations. And one of the impersonations he did in his act was JFK. So it was a coincidence. And these Secret Service agents freaked out, stumbled out of the place. It's now dawn, 10 o'clock. They go right to the airport. They're hungover, blind. And the rest we'll get into when we do the Secret Service episode. But getting back to our story about Abraham Bolden, tries to complain, like I said, up the ladder of command about certain deficiencies in the department in Chicago and in the situation in general. So Bolden was long due to do a month in D.C. In November. It was like December into January, I believe, a 30-day training program in 1963. He's supposed to go in there and do a new training program for Secret Service agents. I have nothing to do with him. There's a bunch of them there. So they were rotating these people in and out. I'm trying to find the exact date of this thing. I think it was like December of 63, maybe into 64 a little bit. But the point of the matter is he shows up for this 30-day program and he calls. Oh, no, it must have been January. Right. It must have been January 64. He makes a phone call from the White House. Take it back. May 17th, 1964. It's May. So he makes a phone call from the White House, and he calls up a guy named Lee Rankin. You say, well, who's Lee Rankin? Lee Rankin is the lead counsel of an organization called the Warren Commission. The Warren Commission is meeting at that time, and he calls them up from the White House from this training program and said, I'd like to testify before you. And Rankin says, all right, let me talk to the other commissioners. We'll get you in here. You know, because the Warren Commission was ongoing now, Eric. You know what I mean? It was in full slate. So the guy next to him hears this, and the next day he is summoned by Martineau from Chicago that he has to return. It's an emergency. He has to return to Chicago because of a black counterfeiting ring that has infiltrated the black neighborhoods, and he's got to deal with this. So this call happens May 17th. On May 18th, he books a flight to return with a couple of other Secret Service agents. And when he hits the ground, he's arrested in manacles. A couple of days later, is indicted for bribery. He then is under indictment for a trumped-up charge of giving these two mobsters a file on their own case of counterfeiting. The two mobsters, one named Spagnoli, another one Frank Jones, both out of Chicago, veteran counterfeiters that knew Bolden very well. So Bolden is called in by Martineau, and he is arrested, he's indicted, and he's booked, Eric. I mean, this guy is literally put on ice for one reason. The day before, he called the Warren Commission and said, I want to testify. That's how quickly they moved on Bolden. Within 24 hours, they took him down. And then he has to go to trial. And when he goes to trial, the first prosecution witness is his boss, Maurice Martineau. And in that trial, they frame him. They bring in Spagnoli and they bring in this guy, Frank Jones, who under oath, lie under oath. They perjure themselves under oath that Bolden demanded, they didn't pay him, demanded a $50,000 bribe to give them this file of themselves from the case that was being pursued on them. And the judge's name in the case was Perry, I believe. The guy's name was Perry. The prosecutor was a guy named Richard Sykes. And Perry, the judge, and Barnes can talk about this better than I can, because J.S. Perry, this was in district court in Chicago. The jury's hung 11-1. He's being framed 11-1 to convict. So Perry invokes what you may know about this from some of your lawyer friends, what's known as an Allen charge. And we could ask Robert about it on Friday. The jury's deliberating. He calls them in. They go back and forth. And he invokes an Allen charge. And the Allen charge allows him to say the following stuff while they're deliberating. Keep this in mind. In my opinion, the evidence sustains a verdict of guilty on counts 1, 2, and count 3. That's what he tells the jury. Okay, now apparently this is what's known as an Allen charge. When the jury's leaning, but they're hung up, and the judge, for reasons that Barnes will have to explain to us, is allowed to put his thumb on the scale and say what he just said, because that's an actual quote from J.S. Perry, the judge in the case. So the jury goes back in and comes back and says, we don't care what you said, Judge. We're gonna hang. So it's nice. Right? No, they don't buy it. Yeah. They don't buy it. So it's a mistrial. So Perry says, damn it. Now this is July of 64. This is July 12th, 1964. So he calls for a new trial 2 weeks later. The trial is literally, the next trial is 2 weeks later. So they get a new jury and they convict him, right? So he now what happens? Now you got the trial of Spagnoli, who was ratting him out to save himself, Spagnoli, and Frank Jones. And he goes before the judge and he tells the judge, I perjured myself against Bolden in open court. In the transcript, he says, I fully perjured myself in that case, lying about, and the judge says, big deal. It goes up to appeal, and he loses the appeal at the appellate circuit, and they said preponderance of evidence. It doesn't really matter if this guy perjured himself and admitted it in open court. So they go, all right, let's bring in the prosecutor, Richard Sykes. Let's see what he says. And they say, because Spagnoli says suborned perjury by Richard Sykes, the prosecutor, told me that my case, they'd go easy on me. That's the Spagnoli rule, I guess. So Spagnoli testifies that he indeed lied through his teeth under oath. And under oath, he says he lied through his teeth. So they bring in Richard Sykes, the prosecutor out of Chicago, before the judge. And he says, what do you have to say for yourself about suborning perjury of this guy? So Richard Sykes, you know what he says to him, Eric? Takes the Fifth Amendment. He takes the Fifth Amendment to protect himself from being indicted for suborning perjury of the guy against Bolden. So what happens to Bolden? You say to yourself, well, what could happen to this guy? He's taken in a straitjacket to a Springfield, Missouri federal mental facility, where he's put into a place where a guy named General Walker was just 2 years before. Same exact room. And he's put in there and he's force-fed meds. Most of them he tries to cheek to get away with it. And he's got a code to try to reach his wife through some sort of letter that he puts in the code because they're reading his letters. But he has some secret code that he developed with his wife before he went in. And he had to go in. The judge sentences him to 6 years, full 6 years he's got to do on this trumped up charge, taking him off the landscape. Now, he can't communicate with anybody. Why? Well, he's put in solitary confinement. So that's not good. That's not very good.
Wow.
So they tell him, you're not going to know what your name is by the time you get out of here. It has some of the articles. This is from the time, so people know that this is a true story, that Hunley and I are not making this up. But which that one say, Hunley? I can't read that.
Warren Group may call ouster agent.
Right. In fact, yes. In fact, that was absolutely true. They were considering it when he was arrested, and they never reached a decision. So it's not something that Bolden made up. They were considering it. Okay, this is interesting. When this is later on, we'll come back to this a little later. But Bolden is, because he goes to prison, is fired by the Secret Service, and he no longer has a job. So now he's in jail in this dungeon, this political dungeon where you can take that down for a second. This political dungeon, suspended agents and ICE charges. Yeah. Okay. So you see, this is a real story. He's out of the Chicago papers, but the time that he's doing in prison is hard time. And he is in a special unit where they can do stuff to your mind. And he finds the Bible and he begins to get heavily into God and begins to have visions in prison of Jesus and God and everything else. It may have saved him to get that Bible, because in his memoir that I read, he talks about how the Bible saved his life. It was the only thing from going insane. It was the only book they let him have was the Bible. And he got deep into biblical stories and deep into a spiritual situation that allowed him to survive mentally and physically inside the prison. I can't see what this one is here. It's a little small.
This is when he was sentenced to a 6-year prison term.
Okay. Yeah, he pleads for mercy. He pleads for mercy from the judge. I don't know if he gets mercy, but he could have gotten 20 years. So he ends up getting 6. He does almost 3.5 years. And he gets out. The reason he gets out is because one day 3 guys show up at the prison and is the assistant DA for Jim Garrison, Mark Lane, and his own attorney, and they have a press conference in 1967. And that press conference put so much focus onto Abraham Bolden that they couldn't hold him any longer. In fact, he said they released him early so they could have him on probation and keep an eye on him. You know what I mean, Eric? By releasing him early instead of him doing his full time.
Yeah, sometimes that's a way that you can do it. It's like a compromise. Like, I'll let you out early, but you're going to be on probation for 4 years, even though if you had served your full time, you would have been out under their thumb in like 6 months or a year or whatever it might be.
While he's in prison, this is what happens. His wife raises the 3 kids. Her house is firebombed. Bullet holes come flying through a windshield. Her car is blown up, and her garage is set on fire. Why would anybody do that? Why would some random black family be subjected to this while this guy who's not in the news anymore is in a federal institution? Obviously, these are deep state operatives. And, you know, he had to put up with this of his wife getting harassed, shot at, blown up, the garage set on fire. I mean, just crazy. And he's got the 3 kids, and he gets out and gets a job in a factory, which is what you showed that picture of there. He becomes a quality control official for a defense contractor in Chicago that makes helmets. It's not really a defense contractor, but it's a place that makes helmets and canteens. And that's him now, a couple of years back. But to go back to that article you were showing before where he gets the check, he's showing the check that he has there. He becomes a union official at this factory, and he raises money. That check is for money to buy 75,000 packs of cigarettes for the troops in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
That's what that's for. That's what he did when he got out.
Nice. Right.
So he gets out and he begins to get back into smokes for GIs. Right. Okay. Yeah. Assembly line inspector of government, or here it is, helmets and canteens. That's right. Ingersoll Products Division, Bolden holds a spot as a union official, UAW 333. Right, 75,000, 6,000 plus packs. America's fighting GIs. Okay, so he does that, and he now is out of prison, and you think to yourself, well, what does he do now? How did he pay for that prison? I mean, how did he pay for his legal defense? This is unbelievable. He pays for his legal defense, and now his appeals, like he's trying to get his name cleared. He's not giving up. He's trying to get the transcripts of his case. They steal the transcripts. He does everything to get the information. He can't get it. So his legal defense fund is raised by him. I'm just going to tell you this, playing classical concert recitals around Chicago, because his degree in university is as a musical composer and concert pianist. So he goes around giving concert. Wow. Yes, wow. That's who this guy is. That's who Abraham Bolden is. He goes around giving concert recitals on a grand piano to raise money for his own legal defense. Fantastic side story.
Whew. Yeah, that is crazy.
So anyway, Rowley gets called before the Warren Commission. And the Warren Commission asks him about Bolden. And he says it's all lies. I never met the man, never complained to me. I never saw him. I don't know what he's talking about. And the Warren Commission kind of knew about this story. And they looked at Rowley like, really, bro? That's where you're going to go with this thing? You know? But you could read the transcript. And Rowley's lying through his teeth under oath. And he denies ever meeting with Bolden. He denies anything about it. And the Secret Service, the Warren Commission suggests that what are you going to do with these drunk guys, by the way, who were hungover and drunk? This is in the Warren Commission. He says, clearly, Earl Warren says to him, they've been fired, right? And he goes, no. And they go, what? They said, isn't it against all regulations for them to be drinking on duty? He says, yeah. He says, well, why are they still with the Secret Service? He says, well, Your Honor, he says, if I may, these men have suffered enough. I swear to God, the humiliation of having their guy have his head blown off while they were hung over on the job is embarrassment enough, I feel. Firing them would do absolutely no good for anybody. So absolutely no one even gets fired from the Secret Service. I mean, even if you say there's no conspiracy, whatever, the fact that they were drunk and hungover the day of the assassination on duty, they didn't even get fired, Eric. They got promoted. They freaking moved up the ladder.
There's a term for it called F up, move up in the military.
F up. We don't have to say it, do we?
F up, move up. I mean,
it speaks for itself.
And by the way, a lot of times that's how they get rid of bad people.
Is you move them on up. They move them on up. Well, that's kind of interesting, because these guys moved up the ladder, and I don't, James Rowley never left LBJ's side from November 23rd on. The second he lands in D.C., there's James Rowley. He never leaves his side. He's with him the day he takes office to the day he leaves office, every single day. And there's some special relationship between James Rowley, which we're going to get into when we do the Secret Service, which is going to be an incredible episode, because we're going to get into each individual guy in the White House detail that's on that trail car, let me just put it that way, and some people that are driving the car, and some people that are riding shotgun in the car, and some people in the lead vehicle of the car. And we're going to show you the differences between previous motorcades that year, and the one that was in Dallas, and the differences between the number of motorcades and that particular motorcade. So Bolden, and here's where it really becomes an incredible story, because Bolden, his entire life afterwards, is trying to prove his innocence, from the Nixon presidency to the Ford president, to Jimmy Carter, all through all of these presidencies. He tries to get a presidential pardon to no avail. Even Obama, who knew this family so well in Chicago, the Bolden family, with an incredible reputation with these kids and the mother, who died in 2005, by the way, the wife, Barbara, an incredible Christian woman. This guy's an incredible Christian guy, but I think he might have hooked up with Farrakhan near the end of his life. I haven't followed him lately, Bolden. But I know he was a Mason, and he used to wear that. You ever see the hat the Masons wear, Eric? It's kind of like a skull cap or something. I think he was a Mason. But that being said, he tries to get a presidential pardon from Clinton and from Trump and from Obama to no avail. Nobody wants to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. And, he's clearly railroaded. The evidence is overwhelming that he was framed. However, the guy who you would think would do it was Obama in 2008. And again, he doesn't want to touch it, probably because of his own CIA background, which we covered in a previous episode, which you can look down below and follow that, because you'll see the Obama
family of CIA.
Family of CIA. Read that one, follow that episode, because we're going to get into another family called the Murets, and we're going to do an episode on that family, which is very similar to the Obama family, and I mean similar. This is the adopted family, and not adopted, they're blood, of Lee Harvey Oswald. It's his mother's sister, and it's the Lillian Muret and the Murets who raised him in New Orleans when his mother, Marguerite, couldn't afford to keep him half the time. He would go over. This was his aunt and first cousins and everybody else, so it's not like an adopted family, but it's physically adopted. So the Murets are another family that we're going to look at as a complete episode, which will go down below, I guess, Eric, with a fourth CIA episode at some point. And then we're going to do CIA in the art world. So we're going to have that, which I've now put together a bunch of documents about CIA and the art world. Separate, that'll be like the fifth CIA episode. And doing the best.
Yeah, those who haven't seen it, the CIA series is very popular. And it's been out for about a year, so a lot of you might have missed it. Seriously, check it out.
Yeah, we're going to add
worth a rewatch.
But so anyway, so Bolden, who is now, I believe, 87, 88 years old, lives in Chicago, all of a sudden wakes up a couple of months ago, and there it is, Joe Biden with a presidential full pardon. There it is, finally, of Abraham Bolden, the black Secret Service agent who said he was framed. He said he was framed because he was framed, and it doesn't matter what he said, because finally, Joe Biden doesn't even know who he is. I believe this pardon came through from Obama who didn't want his fingerprints on it. Joe Biden does not know who Abraham Bolden is. He doesn't even know who he himself is. But nevertheless, I think it's the end of April. On that, April 26th, Eric, you see the date on there?
Yeah, April 26th is
April 26th,
pretty recent.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I moved this story up, was because this was a story I had on the list, but I moved it up when the presidential pardon came through. And while Abraham Bolden is still alive, living in Chicago right now, and his kids are obviously alive.
Which is nice. It's nice to have a living pardon versus a posthumous. I mean, it's like posthumous awards are fine, but how about giving it to them while they're here? So I'm glad. I mean, he's way up there, but
I also wanted to do the story while he was still alive. That's why I rushed into this
for sure
quickly to do this. I mean, the Bolden story is intertwined with the Chicago plot. They originally, I thought there would be 2 separate episodes, but to get this story together, they're kind of intertwined. So I had to do the Chicago plot with Abraham Bolden in it, which he is. And the cover up of the Chicago plot, the articles involving the Chicago plot, and you could follow them, which we'll put up on Locals, the documents that I've assembled over the years, going back to the 70s on this. I've been following this story since the 70s. So the story itself, and I believe, and I don't have any evidence of this, that I said was that Jim Braden and also David Morales were somehow involved in this as either handlers of the shooters. I also believe that those Cuban shooters ended up just going to Dallas after that and being the shooters in Dallas. So I don't think their talents were wasted. They were released for a reason in Chicago. They had an appointment with Destiny and Big D, and so do I, August 15th. So the shooters, I believe, were, like I said before, Alpha 66, the radical, violent militia, as in the teletype. The teletype was telling the truth. The teletype was completely scrubbed, but the clerk, who was an FBI employee, tore that teletype in the middle of the night off of their interfax, whatever they used back then. And that's where the FBI Hoover contacts Rowley, who contacts Martineau, and that's how the story eventually goes down to Abraham Bolden.
That's how we launched the show.
Yeah. Right. And that's where this thing is a dry run, as most JFK researchers have now realized, a dry run for Dallas. And it may not even have been a dry run. It may have been, look, we got him in Chicago. We don't have to go to Dallas, because I don't think, at the end of the day, that somebody named LBJ actually wanted to have it in his hometown. You know what I mean? But that's what they had to do. I mean, was to go to Dallas, and literally the same exact physical plan.
And well, speaking of Dallas, we got some super chats here. A huge one from Back and to the Left.
One of the great names of all time, Back and to the Left.
Thank you so
if
much.
It was Dan Rather sending us a super chat, it would have been head fell forward. But it's not Dan Rather, and I don't know why Dan Rather would give us a super chat, but thank you.
Probably not.
Probably.
And Brian Young, hi from Malaysia. We got Secret Services here as well at massage parlors. Okay.
Wow. How do I get in there? That's interesting. Wow. Malaysia in the house.
Nicholas Kirk, IOU for the previous great content. See you on Locals. Gents came into a little money. Awesome.
Obviously inherited a fortune, Kirk. Way to go. Thank you. We'll put, like I said, we'll put some docs up there.
Daryl's a new member to the channel. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
John Yarber. Y'all need to do this 2 times a week. Already watched every episode twice. I'm flattered. No way in hell we can pull that off.
We do it 2 times a week. That's what we do, right?
We do a show 2 times a week, but we can't do these in-depth things. And besides, folks, guess what's coming Friday?
Oh, boy. This is going to be good, Hunley. What do you got for me?
Freeform Friday.
Oh, my Lord. This is going to be wild. This could go all night.
Right.
Yeah.
Double door super sticker.
Hunley's got to go barbecue and cut me and Barnes off. But
that's right. Again, the bar analogy. Okay. Last call, folks. It's going to be a last call type of thing.
I mean, just let us talk, for the love of God, Hunley.
What I love is I know ahead of time that people have deadlines, and I'm like, okay, well, he's going to get off here. So I cut it off, and I'm just the ass.
Well, you're always the bad guy. Yeah, that's the way it is.
somebody's got to be the adult in the room, right?
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for helping me with the book fund through PayPal. It's really making a difference. If I ever get the General Walker book in the mail, which I've now paid for twice, don't do it, Hunley. Don't taunt me with the Walker book, Hunley.
This book?
Oh, Jesus.
It's right there, man.
God. I mean,
everybody has the Walker book, Mark.
Dude, I saw a homeless guy at the bus stop reading the Walker book. That's how bad it's getting.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you, everyone in PayPal for the books. I mean, I realized looking at my book collection that I do need some more Kennedy books. There's some that I haven't gotten. I have, close to 300, but there's a lot missing that I'd like to have. Some from Britain and some from overseas. And
all right.
Eric, I have a video you asked for. Whoa, dude.
I'm not sure which one that is.
Sex tapes with Hunley. I like this.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about. Awesome. Ping me on local. I'll look. If you can let me know in the chat on locals.
Okay. Thank you, Moyle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Rabbi. So anyway, you can follow me on Twitter, which is now fun. I by the way, when I'm on Twitter, I'm not there to argue with anybody. Like I said to Eric, if you come at me, I just block you. I'm not there to get into a fight. Viva fights with these people. I am not fighting anybody anywhere. I'm just putting up stuff on to like-minded individuals, friends of ours, friends of the show, on Twitter at Lord Buckley. This is not a contentious thing. I just find the most bizarre articles that I could find, and I put them on my Twitter feed. Okay, if you like that, fine. Don't come at me with some sort of violence.
Well, he barely can work Twitter, okay?
Right. I don't even know how it works. I know how the blocking thing works, and I have a blocking finger.
Yes, I know, and I hear about it.
Right. So, look, if you got some other, go follow Hunley if you want to fight, or Viva. Viva likes to debate these people. That's not what I'm doing. And thank you again for the PayPal for the books. Absolutely wonderful. General Walker on a park bench, maybe wins a park. That's funny. That's funny. I mean, the Walker thing, I'll tell you something. Everywhere we look now, we're seeing the fingerprints of the generals for this. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into some of the generals. We're going to get into Cabell. We did Walker.
Eventually, that's going to be an episode, probably.
Yeah, we're going to do Curtis LeMay. I'm trying to get a book through the book fund on Curtis LeMay. I've got the Audible. I don't know. Hunley likes Audible books. I got to see pictures and indexes of books.
I have no time, man.
This Audible thing ain't cutting it for me. I got to get this General LeMay book now, and the Walker book if they ever deliver it. I mean, Barnes obviously somehow picked my pocket for that one, so I'm never getting that.
There's a big pocket there, buddy.
It picked my backpack to get that one. No, but that's for Barnes. He'll read it. And then I don't. What do you got there, Hunley? What is it? Oh, Jesus.
It's Oswald.
It's
Oswald the dog. By the way, I think another 5 dogs sold last week. Folks, when you're buying these, take some pictures of them and send it in. Definitely want to see. That's courtesy of Ziggy Shrugs. Here, turn it over, Mark, so everybody can see the bottom.
The bottom, or
I can't make this up. I love it. But yeah, look at the bottom so you can see her logo.
22 pounds. I can't.
I was wondering why she was saying it cost as much as she said for shipping. Now I get it.
Hunley, it's the size of my toilet bowl, okay? And I'm going to put a handle on it, and I'm going to use it when I go camping. So keep in mind, it's a very valuable item. That being said, Friday we got what? We've got the
Freeform Friday, folks. And it's going to be with Barnes. I don't know if it's Viva and Barnes or Barnes, but Barnes for sure.
What about Viva?
I don't know. It's definitely going to be Barnes. We'll find out as it goes, but doesn't matter.
No, I know. It'll be fun. There's going to be a lot of fun there on Freeform Friday. I know he wants to talk about a couple of things. I don't know what's happening in the AJ trial. I haven't followed it. I've been too busy doing this, but I'm sure he may want to talk about that and some other arch nemesis that he's developed, Barnes.
Most likely.
Yeah, right? And,
Berenson.
I know he wants to talk about the Kefauver committee for some reason. And then Entenmann's versus Little Debbie, a battle to the death. Entenmann's snack cakes versus Barnes's Little Debbie out of Chattanooga. So that's going to be a debate over snack cakes. You could weigh in, bring your own snack cakes on Friday, see if we care. Devil dogs were very popular. What did you have, Hunley, in Arizona? Would you have cactus pies or something?
Dust.
Yeah, dust cookies. What did you have down there?
Whatever the hell's in a supermarket. There's nothing.
Oh, okay. All right. That was probably the Little Debbie's sphere of influence down there to the west.
Yeah, I think mostly Hostess.
Hostess was international. Yeah.
So I don't know. Don't really follow it. But everybody, see you Friday. It's going to be a great show. And we'll have some fun.